Well, I can't remember one leader I met either in my FMCG career or as a consultant advising global firms, not mentioning to me how innovation was critical to their growth plans. You would have to think very hard to find a sector where innovation hasn't disrupted even the strongest of industry players. And that speed of disruption has only been accelerating, obviously, most notably lately because of the COVID-19 pandemic. But what is really interesting is that only 20% of these leaders would actually declare that their organization is fit to deliver that innovation that they so need. And this I find really staggering. And this is worrying a lot of the leaders that we work with. Organizations have mostly been operating over the past few decades in environments that were pretty stable. Having a competitive advantage was mostly a function of your ability to execute better and at a bigger scale than your competition. This is changing, and the business environment is becoming increasingly complex. Think about e-commerce and how that has revolutionized the shopping for everything, from buying a book originally to buying everything now, and even maybe having it in 1 hour delivered by drone by your doorstep. Or how actually your mobile phone has changed the way you make friends, you keep friends, or you leave friends, even defriend. It's even a term that didn't exist before. Think also about kind of the geopolitical context and how it's not been that hard for such a long time and how local crises become global that fast. All this is really pushing companies to rethink their supply chains, rethink how to adapt to changing consumer thinking, consumer patterns, and really, even more broadly, to rethink about the relevance of what they do. And now enters the global COVID-19 pandemic, and adaptation becomes even more of an immediate necessity. Being fit for growth today and tomorrow means something very different versus what being fit for growth used to mean. Companies will need to adapt how to design innovation and execute it, and their organizational constructs to be able to do that efficiently and in a way that will be fit for that new world. A famous saying in the business world had a lasting impact on me. It said that all companies are perfectly designed to deliver the results that they get. Makes perfect sense. It means that if you want different business results, then you need to change the way you do things. And that's very positive. I find it very positive. It means that we can all do something about where we stand today. Change drives different business results. So my first tip would be to really understand very well where you come from versus where you want to go. If you think about it, no navigation system out there would ever work without knowing where you come from. At Skarbek, what we do is that we combine a 360 degrees qualitative diagnostics deep dive into your organization with a quantitative survey that gives you a one point in time picture and map of the health of your organization to execute your strategy the way you intended it. It gives you a real view of your competencies and the gaps that you need to fill to be able to deliver your ambitions. My second tip would be to invest a bit of time to review what you do and ensure that you and your organization are focused on the right priorities. In what we do, we see a lot of great companies with great strategies and ambitions, but rarely do we see a portfolio of activities that are rightly balanced to enable these companies to meet their short-term, mid-term, and long-term growth objectives. And sometimes the governance doesn't really make a difference between small and big ideas, and these companies will spend the same amount of energy regardless of the activity. Next, I would invest in project management competencies. Project management competencies very often get forgotten, but if you think about it, which orchestra would get to the last bar without an expert conductor at the helm? Next, I would take a step back and rethink your organizational and operational models around innovation. A lot of the innovation that gets delivered by companies out there is very much driven by the way they're organized. I call that function-led innovation. The way you organize and your organizational silos will dictate the kind of innovation you build. But really, to answer to the reality of today and the realities of where innovation comes from, which is really anywhere, you need to make sure that you build organizational and operational agility to be able to capture the innovation wherever it comes from and transform it in the way is uniquely needed to make it happen. And I call that innovation-led functions. If you want, designing a way to function based on the kind of innovation you're trying to deliver. Then, innovators need to think about how to build external partnerships and how to bring the best of the outside in. Winning alone via internal competencies is a model that worked in the past and for decades. But today it's not enough anymore, and it needs to be complemented with an active open innovation programs and external strategic partnerships, which will enable you to continue to be relevant wherever the innovation comes from. Last but not the least, and definitely a topic of passion for me, is that to get anywhere on innovation, you need to foster the right innovation culture. And you need to get the engagement right at all levels in your organization. Not having the right culture in your environment will really prevent your organization from experimenting, from taking the risks that are needed. In conclusion, becoming fit for growth doesn't just happen. Athletes get into their best shape via methodology, mental strength and agility, using the right tools, and a lot of sweat. Transforming innovation fitness for growth isn't very different. And very encouragingly, it can be achieved by any organization. And it's never been so critical for businesses out there.